I want to start today with a mental image, one that I think most of us are probably uncomfortably familiar with.
Okay.
Picture your brain as an attic, just a dusty, chaotic, overflowing attic.
Mm-hmm.
And we spend our whole lives just shoving boxes in there. Facts from school, grocery lists, that embarrassing thing you said in a meeting 3 years ago.
Yeah, it's the classic hard drive metaphor, right?
Yeah,
We think the more data we can cram onto the disk, the smarter we are.
exactly. But what if that entire model, what if it's just fundamentally wrong? What if treating your brain like a storage locker is actually just making us feel so scattered?
And that is the central tension of today's deep dive. We're unpacking this fascinating conversation between PeteKane, who's a lifestyle coach with a pretty intense neurological journey of his own,
Right.
and a ghostwriter named Sofie Wolik, who combines a background in forensic science with a deep passion for neuroscience.
Which is a killer combination for a ghostwriter, by the way. Forensics and writing.
It really is. She sort of treats writing like a crime scene, breaking it down. And their main argument is simple, but, well, it's pretty radical. The brain is a thinking machine, not a storage machine.
And if you use a machine that's designed for processing as a warehouse for storage, it's going to jam up.
Precisely. And the stakes here are actually higher than just, being organized. They talk about a concept they call brain rot.
Brain rot. That is a lovely image to start the day.
It's visceral, isn't it? But they're not just using it as like a slang term for watching too much TikTok, although that's part of it. They're describing a kind of physiological atrophy of our creative muscles. When we only consume thoughts and stop generating them, something physically changes.
So our mission today is to figure out how to stop the rot. And the antidote they propose is surprisingly analog. It's not a new app or a seminar. It's about the neuroscience of writing by hand.
And the discipline of dumbing down your communication.
Right, and how to navigate this whole minefield of AI without, losing your mind.
It's all about reclaiming your mental bandwidth.
Okay, so let's start with the hardware then. The brain itself. Sofie Wolik brings this neuroscience background to the table, and she makes this distinction about RAM versus storage. I think this is where a lot of us get tripped up.
Right. Think of your computer. You have your hard drive. That's the storage. You keep your photos there, old documents, stuff you don't need right this second.
It's passive.
It's passive. But then you have RAM, random access memory. That is the active working memory your computer uses to run tasks right now.
And if I have like 50 browser tabs open, which I definitely do, my RAM gets clogged and the whole machine just grinds to a halt.
Exactly. Sophie's point is that the human brain is biological RAM. It's designed to process thoughts and have ideas in real time. It is not designed to hold on to the grocery list while you're also trying to write a strategy doc and remember your partner's birthday. When you try to do all that holding in your head, you have zero processing power left for actual creativity.
So writing things down isn't just about not forgetting. It's like a biological reset.
It's cognitive offloading. Sophie explains that when you physically write a thought down on paper, your brain registers it as captured. It knows it's safe. It can release that data from the RAM.
It clears the decks.
It clears the deck so you can actually think again.
But here's where I want to push back a little.
Yeah.
Because I can capture data on my phone. I can type into a notes app at lightning speed. In fact, Pete mentions a study saying we type 10 times faster than we write.
Right.
So if efficiency is the goal, why are we talking about pens? Why go backward?
Because efficiency is the enemy of synthesis. And this is probably the most critical insight from this part of the deep dive. The writer brain and the typer brain are wired completely differently.
Oh, so, words are words, right?
Not to your neurons. When you type, especially if you're a fast typist, you're essentially just transcribing. It's a shallow form of processing. Information goes from your thoughts straight to your fingers. It's just a direct pipeline. You aren't forced to manipulate the information at all.
So I'm just a stenographer for my own internal monologue.
Pretty much. You're recording, not thinking. But handwriting. Handwriting is. It's agonizingly slow. You cannot write as fast as you think.
Which sounds like a flaw.
It's actually the feature. Because you can't keep up, your brain is forced to summarize. It has to look at the big cloud of an idea, distill it, find the connections, and choose the most important words to put on the page. That process, that friction, is where the learning happens. That's where the dots connect.
So the slowness forces the brain into a higher gear of processing.
Exactly. Deep processing versus shallow transcription. Sofie argues this physical act helps memory and clarity in a way that typing physically cannot. You are literally building new neural pathways because it's hard.
This really landed for me when we look at Pete's story. For him, this wasn't some academic theory or a productivity hack. This was recovery.
It's an incredibly powerful case study. Pete shares that he had a stroke about 4 years ago. And you have to understand, he grew up dyslexic. He was the guy who avoided the pen. He never saw himself as a writer.
And post-stroke, he picks up a journal.
He started writing, and he makes this claim that it stopped me in my tracks. He says he is sharper now post-stroke than he ever was before the event.
That's a profound statement. You usually assume a stroke means a permanent deficit, a loss. He's claiming an optimization.
And he credits the journaling. He stopped trying to store everything in a damaged brain and started processing everything onto paper. He wakes up, he hydrates, he reads, and he writes.
He moved from being a passive vessel to an active one.
It's a huge testament to neuroplasticity. The brain can rewire itself, but you have to give it the right tools. And the tool wasn't high-tech, it was a pen. It's just proof that the act of writing is actually an act of thinking.
Okay, so we've established we need to get the thoughts out of our heads to avoid the rot. But once they're out, and we want to share them, maybe at work, maybe online, we hit another problem, the problem of trying to sound smart.
Ah, yes. The ego trap.
Guilty. I feel like if I use simple words, people will think I have simple ideas. I want to use the big words to show I did the reading, you know? But Sofie, as a ghostwriter, she drops this rule that just completely dismantles that instinct.
She calls it her golden rule. Don't be clever.
Which hurts. I like being clever. I spent years in school learning how to be clever.
We all did. We're trained to think complexity equals intelligence. But Sofie argues, look, if you want to be grand and impressive, go write poetry for yourself.
Yeah.
If you want to connect with another human being, you have to be simple.
You have to bridge the gap.
You have to bridge the gap between the expert's brain and the novice's ear.
Pete brings up a great example of this. His friend, the holistic health expert. This guy has 40 years of experience, a walking encyclopedia. But he can't write a blog post to save his life. Why?
It's the curse of knowledge. The expert gap. When you've been doing something for 40 years, your baseline has totally shifted. You assume everyone knows what mitochondrial dysfunction is. You've forgotten what it feels like to not know.
So the expert thinks the basics are just boring.
Right. They think, oh, I can't write about drinking water or getting 8 hours of sleep. That's so obvious. But Sofie says, no, it's not. To the person on day one, that boring advice is revolutionary. It's life-changing.
I see. So the expert is at level 100, trying to talk to level 1, but they've forgotten what level 1 language even sounds like.
Exactly. And that's where the ghostwriter comes in. Sofie describes herself with this hilarious analogy. She calls herself a vacuum robot.
I laughed out loud at that.
Well,
Vacuum robot.
it's perfect, right? You can vacuum your own house. You have the ability, but do you have the time? The system. She enters the client's brain, vacuums up all that messy, complex expertise, and then organizes it into a neat little dustbin that people can actually use.
Gross, but
Yeah.
very accurate.
It is. She structures the chaos. And she notes the only time you're allowed to be clever or use jargon is when you're speaking strictly to your peers. A neuroscientist talking to another neuroscientist, fine. But talking to a listener on LinkedIn, you just say, the brain can change.
So if I'm hearing this right, cleverness is actually a barrier. It's a wall you build to protect your ego, but it keeps the audience out.
Perfectly put. Simplicity is an act of generosity. You're doing the hard work so the reader doesn't have to.
Okay, let's get tactical. We know why we should write the neuroscience, and we know how we should write simply. But then there's the terror of the blank page. I sit down to journal and my mind is just a white room. Nothing.
The dreaded, I don't know what to say.
It stops most people before they even start. What do Pete and Sofie suggest for that person just staring at the blinking cursor?
They're very practical here. They don't believe in, waiting for the muse to strike. Pete uses physics. A body in motion stays in motion. You just need a shove.
So prompts.
Prompts. Don't start from zero. Answer a question. It could be anything. What am I grateful for? What's the one thing I need to get done today? Why am I frustrated right now?
Yeah, like a starter motor for the brain.
That's it.
Yeah.
Once you answer one question, the next sentence flows. You bypass the intimidation because you're not writing, you're just answering a question.
Sofie has this specific evening routine I found really interesting. It seems to connect back to that idea of clearing the RAM before you go to sleep.
It does. She calls it a recap. Every evening, she writes down 3 specific things. One highlight from the day, one thing she's grateful for, and this is the key for her, a plan for the next week or the next day.
Why is the planning part so critical for the neuroscience side of things?
Because of something called open loops. If you go to bed thinking, oh, I have so much to do tomorrow, your brain keeps spinning on those tasks so you don't forget them. That's anxiety.
Right.
By writing the plan down, you're telling your brain, it's on paper, we're good, we can let go, we can sleep.
That provides the calmness she talks about. It's not just about productivity, it's about emotional regulation.
Absolutely. And for listeners who are thinking about applying this professionally, like for a LinkedIn or a newsletter, Sofie actually translates this discipline into a content formula.
She had that percentage breakdown, right?
She did. The 60-10-30 split. 60% of your writing should be your niche expertise, the stuff you know cold, the boring basics that actually help people.
Establishes authority.
Right. Then 10% is personal, not here's my breakfast, but the human element, the struggles, the values, the behind-the-scenes stuff, that creates connection.
And the other 30%?
Those are the wild cards. This is where you test boundaries. Controversial opinions, counterintuitive takes, things that might ruffle a few feathers.
Why risk that? Why not just stay safe with the educational content?
Because you need data. You use the wild cards to see what resonates. If you post a controversial opinion and it goes viral, you've discovered a new vein of interest in your audience. You can double down on that. It's a testing ground.
That takes the pressure off. You're not trying to write a masterpiece every time. You're just gathering data points.
You're just experimenting. Correct.
Now, speaking of data and machines, we have to address the elephant in the room, or, as the source material puts it, the robot in the room.
AI.
This was the part of the conversation I was really waiting for. You have a ghostwriter who creates human voice and a lifestyle coach focused on human potential. You'd expect them to hate AI.
You'd expect them to say, burn the servers, it's killing creativity.
Exactly. But they didn't. Their take was much more nuanced, although they did start with a pop culture reference that is, well, it's terrifyingly accurate.
Wall-E.
The floating chairs.
The floating chairs. Sofie compares modern content consumption to humans in that movie. We're just floating around, staring at screens, sipping our meals, not moving, and crucially, not thinking.
And that links right back to brain rot. If AI writes the email, and AI summarizes the email, and AI writes the reply, nobody is thinking anything. We're just the fleshy things in the middle pushing the button. That's the danger of passivity.
Yeah.
If we outsource the struggle, we lose the ability. But Pete admits he was resistant at first. He wanted nothing to do with it.
He's a human intelligence guy, but he found a way to use the tool without becoming the tool.
He calls it the 10-80-10 rule. And I think this is a framework everyone listening should probably write down. Break it down for us.
Okay, so imagine you're building a house. The first 10% is human. That's the architect. You have to define the strategy, the prompt, the goal. You have to know what you're building.
You can't just tell the AI, make me something good.
No, garbage in, garbage out. You provide the creative spark. Then the big 80% in the middle, that's the AI. That's the construction crew. It does the heavy lifting. Structuring, drafting, organizing notes, summarizing research. He mentions using tools like NotebookLM and ChatGPT for this.
But you can't stop there.
You cannot stop there. If you do, you have a generic, soulless house. The final 10% must be human again. That's the interior design, the voice, the emotion, the nuance. You have to come back in and polish it, make it sound like you.
So it's a sandwich. Human bread, AI meat. Human bread.
That's one way to put it, yes. The danger comes when people try to make it 100% AI, or they skip that first 10% and expect the AI to have a strategy for them.
Sofie added a really important caution here, though. She said she had to take a break from AI for a while.
She did. She felt her own skills were atrophying. She realized that if she didn't know how to structure an argument herself, she couldn't tell if the AI was doing a good job or not. She was losing her own taste level.
That is such a key insight. To be a good boss to the AI, you have to be able to do the job yourself.
Exactly. If you don't know what good writing looks like, the AI will just feed you mediocrity and you won't even know it. You use AI to accelerate your capability, not replace it.
So she uses it for the tedious stuff now.
The tedious tasks. Grammar checks, organizing messy brain dumps, even taxes. She outsources the drudgery so she can save her limited RAM for the actual creative spark.
It's funny, Pete mentions using these tools to summarize books, and he feels like he learns faster. But he's still engaged. He's directing the learning.
That's the distinction, acceleration versus replacement. If you use the tech to clear the decks so you can think higher quality thoughts, you win. If you use it to avoid thinking altogether, you rot.
It really brings us full circle to that attic metaphor. The goal isn't an empty attic. The goal is a functional workshop.
Right. Whether you're using a fountain pen, a laptop, or a rigorous AI prompt, the biological imperative is the same. You must process, you have to synthesize, you have to create.
So let's just quickly recap the toolkit we've built today. We started with the neuroscience.
The brain is a processor, not storage. And writing by hand is a unique neurological event. The friction leads to clarity.
Then we moved to communication.
Kill the clever ego. Be a vacuum robot. Remember the expert gap, what's boring to you is revolutionary to them.
Then we got tactical with our habits.
Use prompts to beat the blank page. Use the evening recap to close those open loops and sleep better.
And finally, the robot in the room.
The 10-80-10 rule. Be the architect and the finisher. Let the AI be the laborer. Never outsource the soul of the work.
It's a lot to take in, but it's also incredibly empowering. It feels like we have permission to slow down, to pick up a pen, and to actually think again.
And that's the optimistic takeaway here. Pete and Sophie aren't Luddites. They're not afraid of the future. They just want to ensure that as technology advances, our own neural wiring doesn't dissolve.
So here's a question I want to leave you with today. Something to chew on the next time you reach for ChatGPT to write an email or a post for you.
If we continue to outsource the heavy lifting of writing, the structuring, the logic, connecting the dots to an algorithm, do we risk losing the ability to make those connections ourselves?
Are we becoming the storage machines for the AI's thoughts?
Yeah.
It's a scary thought, but the solution might be sitting right on your desk.
Pick up a pen. Just try writing for yourself for a few minutes. See what happens to your brain.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and keep thinking.